The 1970s was a decade when artists took chances that made record executives nervous. Some songs were deemed too long for radio, others were called too weird or simply impossible to sell. Critics laughed and radio stations refused to play them. These are 10 songs from the 1970s that people laughed at until they broke the charts. Number 10. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. When Queen walked into their record label offices in October 1975 with their new single, the executives at EMI were baffled. The song ran nearly 6 minutes long, almost twice the length of a standard radio hit. It had no chorus. It jumped from ballad to opera to hard rock within the same track. The critics who heard early versions were equally confused. Even Elton John, after hearing a rough mix, allegedly asked if they were out of their minds. The song was too long and too weird for radio, he told them. EMI was reluctant to release it. They thought it was too self-important and too experimental. They told Queen the song had no hope of getting airplay. Radio stations at the time had strict policies about song length, rarely playing anything over 3 minutes. A 6-minute operatic rock experiment with no clear structure seemed destined to fail. The label suggested releasing You're My Best Friend instead, a more conventional pop song with commercial appeal. But Queen believed in the song with absolute conviction. Freddie Mercury had been developing Bohemian Rhapsody since the late 1960s, when he was still a student at Ealing Art College. He worked out the parts in his head before ever sitting down to record, carrying bits of paper with lyrics and musical ideas wherever he went. When he finally brought it to the band, they recognized something special, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. The recording process was intense. The band spent 3 weeks working across 5 different studios, perfecting every detail. They devoted 7 full days just to the operatic section. Mercury drummer Roger Taylor and guitarist Brian May sang their vocal parts continuously for 10 to 12 hours a day, layering 180 separate vocal overdubs. They ran the tape through the recording equipment so many times it became nearly transparent. At one point, they held it up to the light and could see straight through it. Unable to convince their label through conventional channels, the band took matters into their own hands. Mercury gave a copy to his friend Kenny Everett, a popular DJ at Capital Radio in London. Everett was told explicitly not to play it on air, but he understood what Mercury was really asking. That weekend, Everett played the song 14 times, claiming his finger kept accidentally slipping onto the play button.
Easy come, easy go, will you let me go?
The phone lines at the radio station exploded. Record stores were flooded with requests for a single that hadn't even been officially released yet. By Monday morning, EMI had no choice but to release the full version. The song went to number 1 in the UK in November 1975 and stayed there for 9 weeks, becoming the Christmas number 1. It became Queen's signature song and one of the most celebrated tracks in rock history. Even the critics who initially dismissed it eventually came around. Today, Bohemian Rhapsody is regularly cited as one of the greatest songs ever recorded, and it's the only song to have reached number 1 in the UK twice with the same version. Number 9, American Pie by Don McLean.
So bye, Miss American Pie.
In 1971, Don McLean brought his label an 8.5-minute folk song about the death of Buddy Holly and the cultural changes that followed. United Artists looked at the running time and shook their heads. Radio stations had informal policies refusing to play songs longer than 3 minutes. An 8-minute epic about obscure cultural references seemed like commercial suicide.
Bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy.
The song was too long to fit on one side of a 45 RPM record, so they split it in half, with the first 4 minutes and 11 seconds on the A side, and the remaining 4 minutes and 31 seconds on the B side. Radio stations initially played only the first half, fading out at the midpoint, but listeners weren't satisfied with half a story. They wanted to know what happened next. people started calling radio stations demanding to hear the complete version. Some stations tried to resist, citing their length policies, but the requests kept coming. Finally, a few brave programmers decided to play the full album cut, and the response was overwhelming. Stations that played the complete version found themselves swamped with positive calls and letters.
We were singing, bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
McLean had been carrying pieces of this song in his head for years. He remembered being a 13-year-old paperboy in New Rochelle, New York, cutting open his bundle of newspapers on a cold February morning in 1959. There on the front page was the headline about the plane crash that killed Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. That moment stayed with him through his teenage years and into adulthood.
Do you recall what was revealed today?
When he finally sat down to write the song in the early 1970s, it poured out as a sweeping narrative about American culture from 1959 to 1970. He wrote it in multiple locations, primarily in Cold Spring, New York, and Philadelphia. The verses referenced everything from Bob Dylan to the Beatles to the Rolling Stones, packed with symbolism and metaphor that people debated endlessly. Was the jester Bob Dylan? Did the King and Queen represent Elvis and folk music? What did the levee being dry really mean?
Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy.
The recording sessions took place at New York's Record Plant Studios in May and June of 1971. Producer Ed Freeman worked with session musicians to capture the song's epic sweep. James Taylor and Carly Simon were among the uncredited backing vocalists. The album, also titled American Pie, was released in October 1971.
Bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
American Pie entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 69 in late 1971. Within 8 weeks, it climbed all the way to number 1 in January 1972, where it stayed for 4 weeks. The album also hit number 1 and remained there for 7 weeks, going double platinum. The song became the most talked about track in the country, with everyone offering theories about its meaning. McLean's previous album, Tapestry, had been rejected by 34 different record labels before finally finding a small company willing to take a chance on it. That album went nowhere. This time, with a song that everyone said was too long and too obscure, he created one of the most successful and endlessly analyzed songs in popular music history. Number 8. Rock Lobster by the B-52s. In 1978, a band from Athens, Georgia, showed up with one of the strangest songs anyone had ever heard. Rock Lobster featured shrieking vocals, surf guitar riffs, and nonsensical lyrics about sea creatures. It sounded more like performance art than a pop single. Radio programmers in most markets refused to touch it. It was too weird, too uncommercial, and too far outside the mainstream sound of late 70s rock and disco. The B-52s didn't fit into any existing category. They wore thrift store clothes and wigs, sang about lobsters and piranhas, and seemed to be making up their own rules. But underground clubs, particularly in New York City, went crazy for the song. The downtown scene embraced its oddness as a breath of fresh air. College radio stations started playing it. The band's live shows became legendary for their energy and weirdness. The song slowly built momentum through word of mouth and club play. It eventually charted in multiple countries and became an underground hit that couldn't be ignored. John Lennon reportedly heard it and said it inspired him to start making music again. Rock Lobster peaked at number 56 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1980, but its influence went far beyond its chart position. It helped usher in the new wave movement and proved that strange, unconventional music could find an audience. The B-52s went on to have even bigger hits in the 1980s, but Rock Lobster remained the song that announced their arrival.
Everybody had matching towels. Somebody went under a dog.
Number 7. Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath went into the studio in 1970 to record their second album. The label told them the record was running short and they needed one more song. guitarist Tony Iommi came up with a simple, fuzzy riff. Bassist Geezer Butler quickly wrote lyrics, later admitting he had no idea what Paranoid actually meant. He just liked how the words sounded. Ozzy Osbourne essentially read the lyrics off a sheet of paper while recording the vocal, aided by plenty of reverb. The entire song came together as an afterthought, recorded quickly to fill out the album. Record company executives heard it and dismissed it as throwaway filler. Critics called the band's heavy sound too dark and too loud. Radio programmers worried the song would scare away mainstream audiences, but something about that grinding riff and Ozzy's haunting vocals connected with young listeners. The song captured a feeling of anxiety and alienation that resonated with the youth culture of the early 70s. It became a massive hit in the UK, reaching number 4 on the charts. In the United States, Paranoid became Black Sabbath's first song to chart, helping to establish them as pioneers of heavy metal. The throwaway track that nobody believed in became their signature song and helped define an entire genre. Number 6. Dream On by Aerosmith. Aerosmith released Dream On in 1973, and it went absolutely nowhere. The record label thought it was too soft, too piano-driven, and not representative of the hard rock sound they wanted from the band. Radio stations mostly ignored it. Steven Tyler had written the song years earlier, and it was deeply personal to him. But in 1973, nobody seemed to care. The single barely made a dent in the charts and quickly disappeared. 3 years later, in 1976, the band and their label decided to give the song a second chance. By then, Aerosmith had built a following through constant touring and their subsequent albums. When Dream On was re-released, audiences were finally ready for it. This time, the song took off. It climbed to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming Aerosmith's first major hit and launching them into superstardom. The song that was deemed too soft in 1973 became the breakthrough that defined their career. The re-release proved that timing matters. Sometimes a great song just needs to find its moment. Number 5. Stayin' Alive by Bee Gees. The Bee Gees recorded Stayin' Alive in 1977 for the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, and it wasn't originally meant to be released as a single. The band and the producers saw it as just another album track, nothing special. They had already delivered How Deep Is Your Love and Night Fever as the main singles. Stayin' Alive was simply meant to fill out the soundtrack. The Bee Gees had spent most of the 1960s and early 1970s as a successful pop group. But by the mid-1970s, their career had cooled considerably. They were looking for a way to reinvent themselves when producer Robert Stigwood approached them about contributing to a movie soundtrack based on a magazine article about the Brooklyn disco scene. Barry Gibb wrote Stayin' Alive inspired by the gritty urban energy they'd witnessed in New York City. The falsetto vocals that would become their trademark were still relatively new for them. The driving beat was designed specifically for the dance floor with that distinctive bass line that became instantly recognizable. But when the Saturday Night Fever phenomenon exploded in late 1977 and early 1978, everything changed. The film became a cultural touchstone that defined the disco era. John Travolta's white suit and the opening strut down the Brooklyn street while the song played became iconic images that defined a generation. Suddenly, every song from the soundtrack was in massive demand. The song captured the energy and attitude of the disco era perfectly. The opening bass line and hi-hat pattern became one of the most recognizable intros in pop music history. The falsetto vocals that some critics had initially mocked became the sound of the late 70s. Released as a single in December 1977, Stayin' Alive went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in February 1978 and stayed there for 4 weeks. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack became the best-selling soundtrack of all time up to that point, and Stayin' Alive became one of the best-selling singles ever released. What started as an unassuming album track that nobody expected to be a hit became a defining moment in 1970s pop culture. It revitalized the Bee Gees' career and made them the biggest group in the world for a brief, shining moment. Number 4. Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac was falling apart when they recorded Rumors in 1976. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks had just broken up. The band was full of tension, and the label worried the album might never get finished. Buckingham wrote Go Your Own Way about his breakup with Nicks, and she hated it. She thought the lyrics were too harsh and too personal. Band members wondered if releasing such a raw breakup song aimed at a fellow member was a good idea. Executives worried that the song's unconventional production would turn off mainstream audiences. It didn't sound like typical radio fare. But Rumors became one of the best-selling albums of all time, and Go Your Own Way became its lead single. The tension and emotion that nearly destroyed the band became the source of its greatest strength. Audiences connected with the raw honesty of the music. The song reached number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and remains one of Fleetwood Mac's most beloved tracks. The pain that seemed like it might end the band instead created timeless music. Number 3. Maggie May by Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart recorded Maggie May in 1970 as a B-side to his single, Reason to Believe. The record label Mercury Records had so little faith in it that they didn't even promote it. They put all their marketing budget behind Reason to Believe, a cover of a Tim Hardin song that seemed like the safer commercial bet. Maggie May was just filler for the back of the single. Radio stations received the 45 and dutifully played the A-side as the label intended, but something interesting started happening. DJs who listened to both sides noticed something special about the song that was supposed to be ignored. They heard a raw honesty and emotional authenticity that Reason to Believe lacked. The song told a semi-autobiographical story about a younger man's relationship with an older woman. Based on Stewart's own experiences as a teenager in London, he'd been involved with a woman at the Beaulieu Jazz Festival who was several years older, and the memory stayed with him. The lyrics captured the mixture of excitement and confusion that came with that relationship. Lines about waking up and knowing he'd been fooled rang with genuine emotion. DJs started flipping the record over and playing Maggie May instead. At first, it was just a few adventurous stations, but as word spread, more and more programmers made the switch. Listeners called in requesting the B-side by name. Record stores started getting requests for a single that the label wasn't even promoting. The label realized they had backed the wrong horse and scrambled to make Maggie May the official single. They had to completely reverse their marketing strategy mid-campaign, something that was unusual for the time. The song that was meant to be a throwaway B-side went to number 1 in both the United States and the UK in October 1971. It stayed at the top of the US chart for 5 weeks. The album it came from, Every Picture Tells a Story, also went to number 1 in multiple countries. Maggie May became one of the most played songs of the entire decade and launched Rod Stewart's solo career into the stratosphere. Stewart later credited the DJs who discovered the song for making his career possible. Without their instinct to play the B-side, without their willingness to go against the label's instructions, Maggie May might have been forgotten forever. It became a reminder that sometimes the people closest to the audience have better instincts than the executives making the decisions.
Oh, Maggie, I couldn't have tried anymore.
Number 2. Rock and Roll, All Night by Kiss. Kiss released Rock and Roll All Night in 1975, and it flopped. The single peaked at number 68 on the Billboard Hot 100, barely registering with mainstream audiences. The band's theatrical costumes and makeup made them seem like a novelty act that would disappear quickly. Record executives at Casablanca Records were getting nervous. They had invested heavily in Kiss, but the band wasn't selling records. The makeup and stage show got attention, but commercial success remained elusive. Then Kiss released Alive, a live album recorded during their 1975 tours. The album featured a raw, energetic version of Rock and Roll All Night that captured what made their concerts so exciting. The studio version had been too polished, The live version had the power and attitude that defined the band. Alive flew into the top 10 of the Billboard 200 album chart. The live version of Rock and Roll All Night was released as a single and became a massive hit, reaching number 12 on the Hot 100. It became Kiss's signature song and anthem. The song that failed the first time became the track that saved the band's career and launched them into superstardom. Sometimes it takes the right version to unlock a song's potential. Number 1. Lucky Man by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Greg Lake wrote Lucky Man when he was just 12 years old. It was a simple folk song, barely more than 200 seconds long. When Emerson, Lake and Palmer recorded their debut album in 1970, they needed one more track to fill it out. Keith Emerson went to a pub while Lake and drummer Carl Palmer laid down the basic track. When Emerson came back, he heard what they had done and wasn't impressed. The song seemed too simple, too plain for a progressive rock band trying to make a statement. But Lake kept working on it. He added bass and an electric guitar solo. Emerson decided to experiment with his brand new Moog synthesizer, adding it to the ending of the song. That synthesizer solo transformed Lucky Man from a simple folk tune into a progressive rock landmark. When the album was released, Lucky Man became ELP's first single. It charted throughout Europe and reached the top 25 in multiple countries. The song that nearly didn't make the album became the band's calling card. The Moog synthesizer solo, added almost as an afterthought, became one of the most famous moments in progressive rock. A 12-year-old's simple folk song became a 4.5-minute masterpiece that helped define an era. The 1970s taught the music industry an important lesson. Sometimes the songs that seem too long, too weird, or too different are exactly what audiences are waiting for. Record executives, critics, and radio programmers don't always know what will connect with listeners. These 10 songs proved that taking risks can pay off. The artists who believed in their vision, even when everyone else doubted them, created some of the most memorable music of the decade. If you enjoyed learning about these unexpected hits from the 70s, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more music history. What other songs from the 1970s do you think deserved more recognition? Let us know in the comments below.